The Wyoming wind did not blow. It scraped. It clawed. It tore across the land like something alive, carrying dust and broken sage that stung the eyes and filled the mouth with grit. Eli Mercer stood outside the Sweetwater stage stop and waited for the woman he had married on paper. He leaned against the hitching post, his gloved hand resting on wood worn smooth by years of rope burns. His left leg throbbed the way it always did when the air turned dry. A bad fall in a winter drift had left him with a limp that never quite faded. At 34, he already felt like an old fence post, standing, but weathered. He was waiting for a wife. The thought sat heavy inside him. He had sworn after Clara died that he would never tie his heart to another soul. The Wyoming winter had taken her, taken their unborn child, that taken the part of him that believed in warmth. But the ranch was failing. The cattle were thin. The house was empty. Silence echoed so loud at night it rang in his ears. He did not need love. He needed help. The stagecoach appeared as a brown blur against the horizon. Then came the rumble of wheels and the tired breathing of horses. Eli straightened, brushing dust from his black coat. He felt foolish wearing it, like a man dressing proper for his own execution. The coach stopped. The door opened. A salesman climbed down, then a miner, and finally, her. Maggie stepped into the Wyoming dirt. Eli blinked. She was not what he had imagined. Her letters had been neat and practical. She wrote about sewing skills, strong hands, and willingness to work. He had expected someone sturdy, and maybe a widow with broad shoulders and farm strength. Maggie was thin, not country thin, city thin. Her dress was dark wool, clean but mended many times. Too fine for brushwork, too heavy for this heat. She turned to lift her small trunk, and Eli saw her face, pale, sharp, beautiful in a quiet, frightened way. He stepped forward. "Miss Orr." She turned. Her eyes were green, not soft green, hard green, like moss clinging to creekstone. "Mr. Mercer," she said. Her voice carried a hint of Ireland buried under years of city noise. "I am Eli Mercer." "I am Margaret. Maggie." She held out her hand. It was small, but not delicate. The fingertips were rough, pricked with old needle scars. Factory hands. He took it for a second. Her skin trembled under his grip. Then he let go. The silence between them was thick as mud. "Let us get your trunk," he said. She nodded, holding her small bag tight against her chest, as if it were armor. The ride to Bitter Creek took an hour. The town was nothing but false front buildings crouched together against the wind. A church at one end, a saloon at the other. When they drove down the street, people stared. Men stopped talking. Women paused mid-sweep. The word floated in the dry air. "Mail order." Maggie kept her chin high, but Eli saw the way her fingers tightened. They bought supplies at the mercantile, boots for her small feet, flour, coffee, bacon, sugar. The shopkeeper smiled at Eli. The smile faded when he looked at Maggie. The pastor's wife turned her back on her completely. Eli felt the old anger rise in his chest, but he swallowed it. Anger solved nothing here. It only fed men like Silas Crane. When they were married that afternoon in an empty church, no flowers, no music, no family, just dust in the sunlight and the dry voice of Reverend Thomas echoing off wooden walls. When Eli slid the simple gold band onto her finger, his hand shook. He had not expected that. He had not expected the tremor. "I pronounce you man and wife." That was all. No kiss, just a nod. The ride to the ranch lasted the rest of the day. The land stretched endless in every direction. Brown, gold, gray, broken only by distant blue mountains. "Is it always this quiet?" Maggie asked softly. "When the wind stops," Eli said. "Yes." "How far is the nearest neighbor?" 10 miles. She swallowed. "So we are alone." "Yes." They crested a hill as the sun dipped low. The ranch lay below. Maggie's breath caught. The house sagged on one side. The porch roof dipped. Fences trailed wire in the dirt. The windmill creaked like something tired of turning. It looked defeated. Eli did not look at her. "It needs work," he muttered. "I have not had the time." She studied the place. "It is standing," she said finally. "That is enough for a start." He glanced at her, surprised. Inside, the house was clean, but empty. Bare floors, no curtains, no rugs, no softness. That night, after supper of cold biscuits and bacon, Eli stood at the bedroom door. "You will sleep here," he said. "And you?" she asked. "I will take the bunkhouse." She stiffened. "But we are married." He stared at the floor. "It is better this way." Her face changed. Something closed behind her eyes. "I understand, Mr. Mercer," she said, voice turning cold. He stepped back. He wanted to explain, wanted to tell her it was not disgust, not rejection. It was fear. Fear of losing again. But the wall was already up. He left. Later that night, the wind howled around the house like something trying to tear it apart. In the dark bedroom, Maggie lay fully clothed on the iron bed. She pulled a small brass locket from her dress. Inside was the face of a girl with laughing eyes. "Sarah," she whispered. "I made it. I am a wife now." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "He thinks I am dirt," she whispered to the tiny picture. "But I will work. I will prove I am worth the roof." Outside, the wind screamed. And in the bunkhouse, Eli Mercer lay awake staring at the ceiling, haunted not by her past, but by the memory of the woman he had buried in a snowdrift. Neither of them knew yet that the wind was the least of their enemies, and neither of them understood how big this land would become, or how much it would demand from them both. The first week on the Mercer ranch was not a marriage. It was a battle. The enemy was not Eli. It was not even the wind. It was the land. The well sat 300 yards behind the house. That distance meant nothing until Maggie had to walk it 6 times before breakfast, with 2 heavy buckets slamming against her legs. The pump handle was stiff and rusted. It took her full weight to drag water from the dark earth below. Her hands, once quick and careful with silk thread in a New York factory, it turned red and cracked under lye soap and cold water. By Tuesday, a deep split opened on her thumb. Every scrub of Eli's heavy work shirts burned like fire. But she did not complain. She stood straighter when she felt him watching. Eli often paused near the corral, leaning on the fence post, pretending to study cattle while he studied her. He expected tears. He expected regret. He expected the city woman to break under Wyoming's sun. She did not. When Shorty, one of the ranch hands, mocked her in the barn and called her a catalog bride, she did not shrink. She stood up, picked up his torn saddlebag, and calmly told him his gear was a disgrace. She offered to stitch it properly if he wanted to ride like a man instead of a fool. The barn went silent. Shorty turned red. Eli watched from the shadows, at something strange rising in his chest, pride and guilt. He had brought her here thinking she would be fragile. She was not fragile. 2 days later, the sky changed. It began as a copper bruise in the west. The wind died. The birds went silent. The cattle huddled together, restless. Eli ran from the barn. "Maggie, inside! Now!" The wall of dust hit like a tidal wave. It swallowed the sun. Afternoon turned into night in a single breath. Sand forced itself through every crack in the house. The sound was a roar, as if the earth itself were grinding its teeth. They barred the doors, stuffed wet rags into the window frames. The house shook under the weight of it. They sat on the floor, back to back, breathing through cloth. Hours passed. When night fell, the heat vanished. Cold seeped through the boards like ice water. "I will sleep by the stove," Eli said. "It is freezing," Maggie answered. "I have slept in worse." She lay in the bedroom shivering for 10 minutes. Then she stood, walked to the doorway, and whispered into the dark. "Eli, go to sleep. It is too cold. I am fine." "You are not fine," she snapped. "And neither am I." Silence. Then softer. "The quilt is heavy enough for 2. He hesitated. Finally, he stood. They lay stiff in the bed, a foot of cold sheet between them. The wind shrieked outside. "I hate the wind," Maggie whispered. "It wears a man down," Eli replied. She spoke into the dark about her parents dying of cholera, about factory work, and about a landlord who called himself protector, about her sister trapped in a burning house because doors were locked from the outside. "I am not clean," she said. "I did what I had to do to survive." Eli listened. Then he spoke of Clara, of the blizzard, of ignoring a doctor's warning, of a wagon tipping, of holding his pregnant wife's hand while she froze beneath snow. "I killed her," he said. Maggie reached for his hand under the quilt. "You survived," she answered. For one breath, he leaned toward her. Then fear pulled him back. "I cannot," he rasped. But something had shifted. The next morning, the dust storm ended. The ranch looked beaten but alive. So were they. Spring did not bring peace. It brought war. Silas Crane arrived in a polished black buggy that did not belong in Wyoming dust. His suit was too clean, and his smile too sharp. He spoke to Eli in the parlor, while Maggie listened outside the window. "You are behind on payments," Silas said smoothly. "And there are rumors about your wife. A woman from New York. Alone. One wonders what kind of work she did there." Eli's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Leave her out of this." "Sell the ranch," Silas said, "or I start asking louder questions." When Silas left, Maggie slid down the wall, heart pounding. She was not just a wife. She was a weapon in another man's hands. That evening, in the barn, Eli stared out at the endless horizon. "Maybe you should go," he said quietly. "San Francisco. Somewhere easier." Maggie stepped closer. "It is too big," she whispered. Eli's chest tightened. He thought she meant the land. "I know," he said, "but you do not have to stay." She shook her head, eyes blazing. "It is too big for one man to carry alone." He froze. "You are trying to carry the debt, the guilt, the ranch, me, like I am glass. I am your husband." "I need a partner," she said fiercely. "Teach me the books. Show me where he cheats. Teach me to shoot. Do not leave me small in a life this big." Silence filled the barn. Then something inside Eli cracked open. The first time he kissed her, it was desperate, starved, not gentle, not careful. Two lonely people colliding in the dark. He stopped before it went too far. "You deserve more than fear," he said. The next morning they opened the ledger. Maggie found the mistake within minutes. "He is charging 8%, she said. "The contract says 6. Eli did the math. Silas had been stealing for months. That afternoon, Eli placed a Colt revolver in her hands. "Breathe," he murmured, standing behind her, guiding her grip. "Squeeze. Do not pull." She fired. The tin can spun off the fence post. She turned, breathless. He was not looking at the target. He was looking at her. The war did not explode all at once. It crept in. Fences cut in the night. Calves claimed as stray. Water diverted upstream. And one evening, smoke rising from the Svensson homestead. Then came the stampede. Gunshots cracked from the ridge. 200 head of cattle thundered toward the ranch. A torch landed on the porch. Flames climbed the timber like hungry fingers. Billy, the youngest hand, fell beneath hooves. By the time silence returned, the house was charred, and Billy lay dead in the dirt. At dawn, the sheriff arrested Eli. "Criminal negligence," he said. "Threats against Mr. Crane." Maggie stood on the burned porch and watched them drag her husband away in chains. That night, Silas returned. He stood in her ruined parlor and offered a deal. "Sign the deed. Declare the marriage void. Come to town. I can protect you." When he touched her face, something inside her turned to steel. She drove her knee into him, scratched his cheek until blood ran bright. "I would rather die in the dirt," she hissed. He fled, promising revenge. 2 hours later, a deputy brought Eli back for 5 stolen minutes. In the barn, surrounded by hay and horses, they clung to each other like drowning people. I am yours," Maggie whispered. "Not because of paper. Because I choose you." They loved each other not out of softness, but defiance. When they pulled apart, Eli pressed his forehead to hers. "You are my partner," he said. "Then let me fight." As dawn approached, Maggie made her decision. If the world was too big to hide from, she would ride straight into it. Maggie did not wait for the sun to rise. She saddled Bess in the dark. The ranch hands tried to stop her. Gus stood in front of the gate, his old face tight with worry. "Mrs. Mercer, you cannot ride alone." "If I send a man, Silas will know," she said, tightening the cinch. "He expects me to cry in that burned house. He will not expect me on the trail." She mounted. "If I am not back in a week," she said quietly. "Tell Eli I tried." Then she turned south. When the land changed as she rode, the soft roll of sagebrush turned into broken stone and dry gullies. The sun beat down like a hammer. Water grew scarce. The silence grew heavier. By the second day, the heat played tricks on her eyes. Shadows looked like riders. Wind through rock sounded like whispers. She rode harder. She thought of Eli in a cell. She thought of his hands guiding hers on the revolver. She thought of the way he looked at her in the barn, not as something ruined, but as something fierce. That memory kept her upright when her muscles screamed. She was 10 miles from Granite Peak when the first shot rang out. Stone exploded beside her head. Bess reared. Maggie clung to the saddle horn. 2 riders stood on the ridge. Cobb, one of Silas Crane's men. "Bring her down!" he shouted. She did not think. She acted. She slid from the saddle, slapped Bess toward cover, and threw herself behind a rock. Her hands shook as she raised the Colt. "Breathe, squeeze, do not pull." Cobb started down the slope, laughing. She fired. The first shot missed. He raised his rifle. She fired again. This time she kept her eyes open. He jerked backward, clutching his shoulder, tumbling down the scree. The second rider fired wildly. A bullet tore through Maggie's upper arm. Pain exploded. She crawled. She mounted. She rode. She did not stop until night swallowed the land. When she finally slid from the saddle, her sleeve was soaked red. The stars above looked cold and distant. "It's too big," she whispered to the sky. Then the darkness took her. In Bitter Creek, Eli Mercer was pacing in his cell when a deputy whispered the news. "Your wife rode south. A crane sent men after her." Something inside Eli went still. Not rage, something colder. That night, the jail keys were left on the desk. Gus waited in the alley with a horse. Eli did not hesitate. He rode south like a man chasing his own heartbeat. He found blood on the rocks. His breath stopped. Then he saw tracks, a horse running hard. He followed them. He found her at dusk beside a small trickle of water. She lay pale against the stone. "Maggie." Her eyes opened. "Eli," she whispered. He fell to his knees, lifting her carefully. The wound was ugly but clean. The bullet had passed through. "You stubborn woman," he said, voice breaking. "You could have died." "Partners don't wait," she answered weakly. He held her through the night. They reached Granite Peak 2 days later. Judge Thaddeus Blackwood listened. Maggie did not hide her past. She spoke of New York, of hunger, of locked doors and fire, of Silas Crane using her history like a weapon. "I ran my whole life," she said. "I will not run again." Eli spoke of Clara, of grief, of mistakes. Judge Blackwood stood. "I will ride back with you," he said. "It is time law visited Bitter Creek." The church was full when the hearing began. Silas Crane sat in the front row, polished and confident. Witnesses spoke. Jeremiah the peddler, the Svensson widow, then Shorty. "I saw Crane's man throw the torch," he said, hat twisting in his hands. Silas stood, shouting. Judge Blackwood's voice cut through him like a blade. "Silas Crane, you are under arrest." Silas reached into his coat. The pistol flashed. Maggie screamed. Eli shoved her down. The shot split the air. A marshal's rifle answered. Silas Crane fell where he stood. The church went silent. Dust floated in beams of light. Eli lifted his head. Maggie was beneath him, shaken, alive. Outside, the Wyoming wind blew as it always had. But something had changed. The debt was corrected. The charges dismissed. The ranch remained theirs. The rebuilding took all summer. They tore down the burned porch and built a stronger one. They deepened the well. They fixed the fences. Maggie worked beside Eli, not behind him. On the roof one afternoon, she paused and looked at the valley. It was vast, endless, beautiful. Eli climbed up beside her. "You used to hate this view," he said. "I used to think it would swallow me," she answered. "And now?" She smiled. "Now I think it was waiting to see if we were strong enough to stay." That winter, a boy named Toby arrived with nowhere to go. They kept him. They fed him. They did not raise a hand when he dropped a jug of milk. "We fix things in this house," Maggie told him. They were not just rebuilding timber. They were building something larger. A family. A life. One spring evening, they rode to the ridge above the ranch. The sun bled gold across the sky. Below them, the house glowed warm. Smoke curled from the chimney. Toby walked the fence line. "It's too big," Maggie whispered again. Eli smiled this time. "Too big for what?" "Too big for shame," she said. "Too big for small stories. What too big for men like Silas?" She turned to him. "But it is big enough for us." He pulled her close and kissed her, slow and certain. The wind blew around them, but it did not feel cruel anymore. They rode back down toward the lights of home. The land was still vast, still demanding, still dangerous, but they were no longer afraid of its size. They had grown to match it. And this time, they were not standing alone.